He's just as irresponsible and dangerous as the town hoodlums. That was a writer for the El Paso Times. My name is Kevin, and this is History Goon. What's going on, everybody? If you're joining me on video, like on YouTube or Patreon or maybe Spotify, if they've decided to let this episode go out or not, you're going to notice I have a huge mess behind me. But that's because things are changing around here. I'm in the process of revamping my backdrop. Going to make it very, very cool. Once I have it all set up, I'll walk you through it, whatever everything is. Because it's not like I'm just throwing random stuff on the wall. Everything has a reason, sort of. Well, one of them, the reason is because I really wanted it. Then one of them is family stuff, which I'll walk everybody through once that's up there. And the other one's just because it's cool and it'll look awesome on the wall. So anyway, if you caught my little short video I did on the Facebook page or on Patreon, patreon.com/1159media, you'll see that I announced that episode 30 is going to be the final episode for season 1. I'm going to take a couple of weeks off. I'm going to rebuild my backlog so that I can make sure I'm getting stuff out on time and I'm doing the best quality stuff that I can for everybody. And I want to have some really interesting topics. I'll go over that at the end after we get through all this. Because right now, we've got to do some cowboy. Because we haven't done cowboy stuff yet. The thing is with doing a cowboy episode is you can't do a proper cowboy episode without a proper cowboy name. Luckily for him, Dallas Stoudenmire has that covered in spades. That might be the most cowboy name that there has ever been. It's up there. It's pretty good. Our boy Dallas was born December 11th, 1845 to Louis and Elizabeth Stoudenmire in Aberfoyle, Alabama. He was one of 9 kids, but back then that really made sense because a lot of the time some of your kids aren't making it to adulthood. Some of your kids aren't making it to adolescence because healthcare was zero back then. This is back when you went to like a barber for your teeth and shit. So your barber was your dentist. He was also the doctor. He was the veterinarian. He was probably making barrels on the side too. Busy folks. Anyway, in 1862, at the age of just 17 years old, he joins the 45th Alabama Infantry to go fight in the Civil War. And I'll let you guess what side he's fighting for. He is quickly found out and discharged from the Confederate Army, but he re-enlisted March 8th, 1864, and was allowed to serve this time. So, let's see. Yeah, a few months later, so he was probably 18 by then. There are some conflicting stories of the extent of his injuries that he received during the Civil War, but it's possible that he carried a couple of bullets with him for the rest of his life that he picked up during the Civil War. Right after the war in 1867, he moved to Columbus, Texas with his brother Abednego and his sister-in-law. That's a great name. That was one of the... Oh, geez. That's a biblical name and I can't remember what it was. I haven't gotten that far yet. I really have to get back on that. Anyway, so he moves in with his brother Abednego and his sister-in-law, who, since this is the 1860s, she doesn't have a name. Sorry, I don't make the rules in history. Like many other Confederate veterans, he left home for Mexico.
Hello. You boys like Mexico?
Not to see the sights, more to kill a bunch of Mexicans and keep Emperor Maximilian of Mexico in power. This worked for a bit, but Maximilian was eventually overthrown and executed by firing squad June 19th of 1867. Shit happens, you know. After that, Dallas returns to Texas, which wasn't in Texas yet. It was still Mexico, I think. ADD break. I was wrong. Texas became a state in 1864. Dallas was around in 1841. So I was wrong. I don't get it right all the time. I'll be the first to tell you that. Matter of fact, yeah, I don't. So Dallas is already in Texas, but Dallas goes back to Texas. And this time he's working on his brother's farm in Colorado County, Texas. A lot of geography going on here. From 1870 to 1873, he wandered Texas and just south of the border into Mexico, doing odd jobs. And according to some legends and stories, he was part of a rustling gang, which if you don't know what that is, those are dudes that would get together and they would ride onto other people's ranches and steal their cattle or their sheep, depending on what they had, and then bring them into town, change the brand a little bit, and then sell them. Which, if I remember correctly, back then, cattle theft and horse theft and basically stealing livestock like that was a death sentence. They would hang your ass for that, which, yeah, that makes sense, I guess. Another story, and this one I really like, and that he was going to Mexico to hunt for Emperor Maximilian's lost gold. He finally finds his calling January 17th, 1874, when he joins the ranks of the legendary Texas Rangers. Not the ones that Billy Martin coached. The good ones. The cops. Those Texas Rangers. The Walker Texas Rangers is what he joins. The company he joined was run by Captain J.R. Waller, and in no time, Stoudenmire became a sergeant. The area that he and his compadres covered ranged from Arith County, north to Stevens County, and then back to the southwest into Brown County. This is all in central Texas, kind of right smack in the middle of absolutely nowhere at the time. And again, this is before cars. Everything's being done on horseback. That's a lot of ground to cover. Because I'm not sure if you're not from here, like if you're from Europe or whatever, Texas is one of those states that you can drive for 3 days and still be in the same state. I've never been there. I've only ever heard people talk about it. So to put that into perspective, if I drive 3 hours in any direction except north, I'm in the middle of another state. If I drive 3 hours north, I'm almost into a different country. Texas is like 36 hours wide. It's huge. And also, I just learned today that I can't remember if it was Lake Michigan. I think it's Lake Michigan is big enough that you could put the entire UK in it. So that's why we don't have to travel to different countries. We have plenty of stuff to see here. Just saying. We've got deserts. We've got jungles. We've got a mountain with heads on it. We had a mountain in New Hampshire that the face fell off of. So now it's just a mountain. It doesn't have a face on it anymore, which is sad. There's also a mountain there that you can drive up and the temperature will drop like 50 degrees from the base to the top of it. And it'll snow up there in August, which is really cool. Yeah, if you're from the New England area and you've never been up Mount Washington, do it and stop every time you can on the way up to get out and take pictures, because you'll be like, oh, look at these cute trees. They're so small. You walk over to the edge and you go, oh shit, that's the tops of them. And then on your way back down, make sure you stop whenever you can to let your brakes cool down so that they don't just stop working. There's also an Arby's, like right near the bottom of the mountain. At least there used to be that, they have the meats. It's perfect. The primary objective of his crew was fighting off the Comanches, who had been messing up Texans for quite some time. Killing people, kidnapping left and right. They are a problem. A problem about to be solved. With all the financial trouble the government of Texas had, they had to disband some of the Ranger elements, including Company A, where Dallas was stationed. By February of 1874, he is back out to work as a carpenter. By May of that same year, he's been called back up to the ranks when Company A was reformed due to more native raids across Texas. From May to December, he spent his days chasing Indians and sleeping on the trail until December 15th when the company was disbanded again. This time, he decides to call it quits for good with the Rangers. This chapter of law enforcement is closing, with another one possibly about to open. Spoiler alert. Again, he goes back to Colorado County and works on the farm. He works as a wheelwright in the towns of Mentz and Allenton. Both are right outside of Columbus, Texas. I don't know if Columbus is a big town or not. Again, I've never been to Texas. I do know that their state ambassador is a giant beaver, and he has the biggest gas stations you've ever been to. Buc-ee's is fantastic. Just again, if you're not from here, if you're a foreigner and you ever venture to the United States and you find yourself in an area with a Buc-ee's, you need to go there. And if you do, I want video because I'm not sure the European mind can comprehend what Buc-ee's really is. You have 300 gas pumps outside. And then you have a gas station that's the size of like a Home Depot with all kinds of stuff in it. Like they've got food, they've got drinks, they've got merchandise. I think you can buy boats there. I'm not sure. I know you can buy artwork in a Buc-ee's and they hang it like right outside the bathroom so you can see it when you go in to poop in like the cleanest gas station bathroom you've ever seen. It's incredible. The pulled pork sandwiches are amazing. The jerky's good. It's a good time. You could spend 5 hours in a Buc-ee's. I'm pretty sure of that. I'm not sure they'll let you, but you could definitely do it if you tried hard. So it's important to mention that by all accounts of people that knew him, aside from being a Confederate soldier, he was a really good dude. I mean, he was probably only a Confederate soldier because he was from the South. If he had been, a Northerner, he would have gone and fought still anyway, most likely. But he was a good dude. Not all Confederates were bad. There definitely were some. One of which may come up in season 2. Just saying. Big fan of Bed Sheets. Not a great guy. It was a really good movie with a main character kind of named after him that we might talk about him. I think season 2, I'm going to do some like really nasty bastards. I want to do some bad guys in season 2. Yeah. We'll do that. Anyway. So he's a good dude until he gets into the liquor and then he turns into a monster. He'd get completely housed and pick fights with people at saloons, and most of the time these would result in gunfights, which he's really good at, even when he's drunk, which is bad. Once, while riding through the prairie area of Bernardo, he bumped into a fella that he had been feuding with for a while. The pair exchanged words and would eventually exchange gunfire, and it resulted in the other guy bleeding out in the dirt and Dallas Stoudenmire riding off into the maybe sunset? I don't know. I wasn't there. I don't know what time exactly it was. On another occasion, he went to a party. And as parties tend to have, there was booze. Booze and Dallas are a bad mix. He hits the hard stuff and got into a fight with several men, at which point in time he pulled his revolver and shot one of them before being wrapped up and chained to a chair by a deputy that just so happened to be there. This is wild. The deputy left and told one of the partygoers to keep an eye on him until he sobered up. He just shot somebody, and they're like, sleep it off, you rascal. Unfortunately, the babysitter, probably also a little sauced up, fell asleep, and Dallas freed himself and took off. And because when the deputy came back, Dallas isn't there, Dallas can't be charged with anything. Bet they wish they had body cams. Stoudenmire was really good friends with a pair of brothers, and again, the names, Tuck and Buck Hoover. These guys sound like a WCW tag team from the 80s. Tuck and Buck Hoover in their overalls. Problem here is, the Hoover boys got into a disagreement with another set of brothers, the NWA tag team champions, the Sparks boys. They get into a fight over some open country around Eagle Lake. Being a good friend that Dallas was, he shows up to back up his buddies. The discussion gets heated. Dallas and Tuck clear leather and seriously wounded one of the Sparks brothers and killed one of their ranch hands, Benton Duke, and his teenage son. Doesn't have any real effect on the rest of the story, but it's so strange that it has to be mentioned. September 14th of 1876, he sat on the jury for the trial of a public outhouse. A public was put on trial and found to be a public nuisance. The outhouse had no legal representation and was found guilty and ordered to be hung. To be cleaned. Would have been way more fun. Imagine being that guy that's got to build scaffolds, that's got to build a scaffold to hang an outhouse from. Then you have to march the outhouse up the corpses of its dead family, basically. You will hang by the neck until you are dead, 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 you son of a bitch. Do you have any final words? That's an outhouse. Oh, yeah, probably not then. Then you got to throw tarp over it so that when it, you can't just hang it with his face out. So here he moves up to the panhandle of Texas and started working on the sheep ranch that his sister Virginia and her husband Samuel Doc Cummings own. He also contracted VD while he's here. Coincidence? Who knows? We don't know if it's a lady of ill repute or if one of the sheep had something going on. I'm going to guess probably a woman. He'd end up going back to San Antonio to get his musty manhood fixed. Ugh, can't believe I said that. That was gross. The treatment was a success, and he ended up going out to Socorro, New Mexico, where he was elected town marshal due to his military and ranger background. The rumor of him gunning down half a dozen men from Bernardo to San Antonio also didn't hurt his campaign to become marshal either. There's also a rumor that he was a hired gunman during the El Paso Salt Wars in the winter of 1877 into 1878. And that's exactly what it sounds like. It's a small-scale war over a series of salt mines at the base of the Guadalupe Mountains in West Texas, because salt is important. Season your goddamn food. I see one more video of chicken. That's the color of printer paper. I'm canceling my internet. Salt and pepper count. Put it on there. After a few years of doing a decent job in Socorro, he was hired by the town of El Paso, which at the time had the nickname Hell Paso, due to its super dangerous reputation. I do know that El Paso is in West Texas, for the simple fact that Marty Robbins is one of my favorite country musicians of all time. Down in the West Texas town of El Paso, I fell in love with a Mexican girl. More at 11. Over the course of just 8 months, 6 marshals had come and gone, either leaving town or being killed on the job, but Stoudenmire was sworn in April 11th of 1881 regardless. Shortly after being sworn in, he went to get the keys to the town jail from Deputy Marshal Bill Johnson. Aside from being a deputy, Johnson was moonlighting as the town drunk. Johnson gave Stoudenmire all kinds of trouble. Pulling the, I don't know where the keys are, and, you'll have to figure it out on your own, blah, 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 just making the new marshal's life difficult. Dallas Stoudenmire, being 6'4" and well over 200 pounds, this dude is built like a pro wrestler. He's had enough of this drunk idiot, and he quite literally grabbed him by the ankles, pulled him out of his chair, upended him, and shook his pockets out. So not only did he get a bunch of stuff out of his pockets, he found the key too. I would imagine he just dropped him on the back of his head and was like, "I'm your new boss, by the way." Little did Dallas know that the deputy that he just Wild West Suge Knighted was in tight with a pretty rough crew of rustlers known as the Cantillo Gang. The gang took its name from the ranch of its leaders James, John, and Frank Manning. They controlled a large area of land that sat on both sides of the Rio Grande River outside of El Paso. So after a quick look, I was trying to figure out, I don't really know where the parcel of land was that they owned. So they either owned land in Texas and New Mexico or Texas and Mexico. Either way, that's not super important. What's more important is the fact that they own a handful of Texas Rangers. The next day on the 12th, one of the ranch hands for the Manning gang named Johnny Hale, which is another great cowboy name, and some of his boys went south to El Paso, Mexico, and stole 30 head of cattle from Don Yacinte Ochoa's ranch. He was also the kind of, sort of, but not really mayor on the Mexican side of El Paso. Kind of like anybody that lives in a small town, you get that one dude that everybody knows where you don't have a mayor, but anybody needs advice on anything, or if there's political crap going on in town, this is the guy whose opinion you're going to get. That guy. You know who I'm talking about. He complains to Ranger Captain George Baylor because he didn't know if Stoudenmire was in the pocket of the Mannings or not. Captain Baylor sent out Ed Finch, who collected 10 federales and a coa, and headed to the Cantillo Ranch to ask about the cattle. Bad news was 3 rangers had been killed at the ranch earlier this year. Hale stayed tight-lipped under any questioning from Finch, and after a while, Finch took off with 8 of his men, leaving 2 there. He wants to go do some recon of the area, try to cover some ground, see if maybe the cattle weren't stolen, maybe they just wandered off, benefit of the doubt and all that. Benefit of the doubt went out the window when, after Finch and his boys took off, the 2 men that he left there were shot and killed by Hale and the rest of the guys. On April 14th, so just a couple of days later, the 2 missing Mexican federales were found, and Baylor returned and arrested some of Hale's posse and took them into El Paso for processing. Marshal Stoudenmire was there at the hearing that day, where he got a firsthand look at how screwed up this town was with corruption. The rustlers and murderers were released pending a future trial. That's never going to take place, spoiler alert, and the bodies of the 2 dead men were sent back to Ochoa for burial. Not long after that, he was confronted by former Marshal George Campbell, who had been fired for his ties to the Manning gang. He is wasted, and he starts taunting Dallas and said, quote, "I'll try you within 5 days." He also had a thing where he would pretty regularly harass Constable Kremkow, which was Dallas's basically his second in command. Within the week, Johnny Hale rode into town and started his stuff up again. Stoudenmire was sitting at his brother-in-law's Globe restaurant when the shot rang out that killed Constable Kremkow. Stoudenmire stepped from the restaurant, both guns blazing, and kills Johnny Hale, George Campbell, and an unnamed bystander accidentally. This became known as the 4 dead in 5 seconds gunfight. Newspapers as far away as San Francisco and New York carried the story of the shootout, making Stoudenmire a nationally known name. Also, he wouldn't face any charges for killing the bystander because there was a law that protected lawmen from prosecution for hurting or killing a bystander while doing their duty. Man, it's a really good thing they didn't have Twitter and Facebook back then, because you think policing's bad now. Oh boy. In the case of a lot of these Wild West lawmen, they were just as bad as the guys they were chasing. Looking to you, Pat Garrett. You know what you did. Anyway, between April 1881 and February of 1882, Marshal Stoudenmire would gun down 7 more men in the line of duty. Things got interesting again on April 17th when Dallas was out on night patrol on the streets of El Paso with his old buddy and brother-in-law, Sam Cummings, who he has deputized at this point. Bill Johnson, the former marshal, stepped from between a couple of buildings and opened fire on him. He did this because Stoudenmire had killed his former boss, George Campbell, which was in that last big shootout. Cool as a couple cucumbers, Dallas and Sam ventilate this guy. They hit him with 8 rounds. Needless to say, he didn't make it. They didn't render aid. They didn't call 911. They didn't have a paramedic on standby. This guy just died, as you do when you get shot 8 times with 45 long Colt, which is most likely what they were using. That's a big round. That's like getting shot with a pinky 8 times. Right after this gunfire, I need to work on punctuation. Right after this, gunfire erupted from the saloon that Frank Manning owned. An unknown member of the gang fired from inside and clipped Stoudenmire in the heel. Oh. This didn't stop Dallas Stoudenmire. It just made him mad. And he and Sam rushed into the saloon, which caused the gang members inside to, slide out the back door and escape into the night. Dallas took a seat for a little bit while Sam rounded up 35 men that would become known as the Law and Order League. He has to sit it out because, again, he got shot in the heel, which sucks. So the Law and Order League would help patrol El Paso while Dallas Stoudenmire drank off the bullet hole in his foot. To help alleviate the pressure in town, Captain Baylor of the Rangers, Sergeant James B. Gillett, and 7 other Rangers went to El Paso to help with the absolute nightmare that's unfolding. Over the course of the next few nights, the Law and Order League would frequent the regular hangout spots of the Cantillo gang and leave nooses hanging in the bars, which that'll send a message. Make sure who you're doing that to, because you go from sending a message to hate crimey very quickly. It's a razor thin line that you're walking doing that. In retaliation, the gang tried to kill Deputy Marshal Jones in his sleep, but luckily for him, all they hit was bedroll. April 24th, 7 days, 1 week after being shot, Stoudenmire returned to duty, and the League disbanded except for 5 of the Rangers that remained behind to help out in El Paso. Things stayed exciting for the very fine, upstanding folks of El Paso when on May 28th of 1881, the first train arrived after the railroad was complete. With the railroad comes Chinese immigrants, and like any other group, there's going to be criminals among them. A small-scale Tong war. Tongs are small Chinese gangs, not the metal clicky things that I annoy the piss out of my mother with. So these little wars would break out. After a few nights of gunfire in the Chinese quarter, Dallas stepped in and things stopped on the violent side almost immediately. The war continued but was quieter, this time picking up with poisonings, beatings, and garrottings taking place instead of shootings. So we've refined our technique as to how we're going to handle things. Bad news hits town on June 1st of 1881 when George Felix Manning rolls in. He was another member of the Manning clan that had been causing trouble for Dallas for so long. George Manning, though, everybody in town seems to like him. The only thing they don't really like is that, that little tiny thing where his brothers are criminals and outlaws, and they're always causing trouble and beating people up in the streets and stealing cattle and just being general menaces to society. But he seems like a good guy, right? I mean, it's not like that would ever travel in the family, right? Anyway, let's find out together as a couple. Being an important member of the community gave him some clout, and he used this to further support the Cantillo gang. No way. Well, George Felix was throwing his weight around. Dallas was busy dealing with a group of natives that had come into the area that had started some trouble for the people of El Paso. Jumping ahead to November 5th of the very same year, Stoudenmire was on the hunt for an outlaw that had just arrived via train and was holed up in a boxcar at the train station. Our bad guy thought that the marshal was after him, and he decided to hang tight in the boxcar. When he spotted Dallas, he opened fire on him, which resulted in a running gunfight through the train yard, and the bad guy got away. He would later brag about getting away from the now legendary lawman. Despite missing this bad guy, Stoudenmire is being praised in the papers in El Paso, San Francisco, San Antonio, and Las Vegas, New Mexico. The real Vegas didn't exist yet. The mafia wasn't around to build a city in the desert that they could control all the gambling in yet. We'll get there. During the week of December 26th, he was hired out by the town of Rincon, New Mexico, to help solve a string of train robberies that resulted in the loss of nearly $40,000, which at the time would have been damn near $2 million. By the 28th, he had nabbed the 2 men responsible and the 3 people that had been used to launder the money. In January of 1882, he was again off to New Mexico to help U.S. Marshal Big Tony Nese take down members of the Hoodoo Brown Gang that had been running amok in Las Vegas, New Mexico. I've heard a little bit about that gang. I think that could be another interesting thing to talk about at some point. February of that year, a Kansas lawman rode into El Paso on the trail of a rapist that had fled to Mexico and asked for help getting him. Dallas redeputized his comings and allowed him to go with the Kansas sheriff, which was good, as Dallas would end up in Columbus, Texas, again, this time sick as a dog with some flavor of flu. Well, there he charms the pants right off of Isabella Sherrington and married her on the 20th. Cummings returns empty-handed. Things didn't go well for a while. On February 14th, James Manning entered the James Coliseum Variety Theater and shot Sam Cummings to death. That's bad. Because not only is he law enforcement, he's the town marshal's best friend and brother-in-law. His brother George and his influence smoothed things out, and James faced no charges. This is when it becomes a mix of, again, Marty Robbins and Tombstone. Dallas and Isabella return to the news on the 25th, and he is pissed. He mounted his horse and rode out into the hills where the gang was known to have a hideout. When he arrived, he blew away a handful of gang members. He obviously, I mean, he technically, I guess, he really went out there to arrest them legally, but got there and was like, oh no, I forgot my handcuffs. And just shot him, killed them all. It's very likely that John Manning was among the men that got smoked that day because he is not heard from ever again after that. Oh no! When Stoudenmire returned to town, he would start making threats and trying to get any son of a motherless dog with a surname of Manning to pick a fight with him. One of the ways he tries to get them to pick a fight is he sets up targets and starts shooting at him on the site where he had killed Johnny Hale and George Campbell, just to really needle him and get under their skin a little bit. The Mannings would make sure that if any of them went into El Paso, they traveled in packs because they knew that if Stoudenmire caught any of them sleeping, they're dead. They could have brought 3 or 4 of them at a time. He's good enough that he's going to take him down. They also started buying up businesses, properties, and politicians in town to help them out. So buying politicians is nothing new in the United States, unfortunately. And you think it's corrupt now. You should have really seen it when there was like zero accountability. I guess like now. Oh, womp womp. They would go as far as to come into town with a handful of rangers that they owned because they figured it would kind of even things out. Honestly, Dallas, again, could have taken 2 or 3 of the gang members at any time by himself in a gunfight or in a fist fight because he was big boy. With everything going on, with everything going on between the death of Sam and the gang getting more brazen, Stoudenmire took to drinking even harder, to the point that the folks around town said that he looked lost without his buddy. And he was. Not only did he lose his second in command, he lost his brother. He lost his sister's husband. And he feels responsible for the fact that this guy's dead, even though it wasn't his fault. He was off getting married and whatnot. And this guy just rolled into the theater and Abe Lincolned him, and that was it. Nothing he could do about it. Even if he was there, he couldn't have done anything about it. But He's a violent, giant man. And he gets more violent when he drinks. And now he's always drinking. So I think we can kind of figure where this is going. March 29th, Frank Scott and Ed Scotton, who are a pair of Rangers that the gang owned, they're in town drinking and they're running their mouths specifically about Dallas. Word got back to the marshal and he finished up his drink and he grabbed now Deputy Gillett and headed for the saloon because he needs a drink. He just had one, but, you know, you've had a drink. You may as well have another. So he busts into the bar. Scott and Scotton and a few other Texas Rangers are, they're boozing it up, having a good time. Dallas manhandles Frank Scott against the wall. It was in the middle of chewing him a new ass when both he and his deputy noticed that they are in some fairly deep trouble. They noticed at least 3 holes in the wall of the room, and they only noticed them because there's now shotgun barrels poking out of them. James Manning and some of his boys could spray Stoudenmire and Gillett with buckshot at any moment. They're just waiting for their friend Frank Scott to get out of the line of fire, and as soon as that happens, they're going to light him up. So, under the circumstances, the marshal makes the smartest choice he can and refrains from letting go of Frank Scott, using him as a human shield as he and Deputy Marshal Gillett carefully back out of the bar. Only then did he release his two-fisted grip on Scott. After this incident, there was a resulting flurry of letters between Captain Baylor and El Paso officials over the incident that the Manning brothers were involved in. But they were very happy to paint Dallas as if he caused all of this because he was either drunk or on opium. Even though these guys are running their mouth, they're murderers and thieves. And he's had just enough whiskey to think it's a good idea to go in here and fight all these guys. We've all been there. Under public pressure, Dallas Stoudenmire, James Manning, Frank Manning, and Dr. George Felix Manning signed an actual physical peace treaty on April 16th, witnessed by 4 citizens of El Paso. Neither side bothered to abide by the treaty, and tensions continued. Sounds like something else that's going on right now, but I'm going to mind my own business. Stoudenmire's boozing continued as well. On Sunday, May 7th, 1882, Parson Taze at El Paso's Church of St. Clement used part of his sermon to call out the town marshal's abuse of substance and disgraceful public conduct under the influence of those substances. Word of the sermon reached Dallas that afternoon, and he decided he needed to have a couple of drinks about it. Later that night, very, very late that night, after hours of just pounding drink after drink at the Acme Saloon on San Antonio Street, our hero decides he needs to make his way to church, specifically the Church of St. Clement. And he wants to do this because he has to talk to Parson Taze. Stoudenmire drew both of his guns and empties both barrels against the church bell. By the time he was finished, the bell was clanging loudly because, he might be wrecked, but he can still shoot. You just aim for the bell in the middle. That's the part you need to remember because it's all going to move. Just aim for the one in the middle that's not moving. The quote-unquote respectable citizens of El Paso were all asleep at that hour and assumed from the gunfire and the clanging bell that a fire has broken out, since that's basically, back in the day, how you would have alerted the town that there's a fire. Nobody liked that. They weren't pleased to have been roused out of bed in the panic, and Dallas proved once again that he was his own worst enemy. Fewer and fewer citizens could defend his behavior at this point. And on May 27th, 1882, the El Paso City Council confronted Marshal Stoudenmire at a meeting. One person at this meeting even kept a shotgun within reach in case Dallas got a little violent. The council spelled out how the marshal had become too drunk or far gone on opium on most days to perform his duties, and he was suspected of pocketing fees from fines to feed his appetites instead of passing on those fees to the council so they could feed their appetites. Again, it's politics, baby. It is all corrupt all the time. May 29th saw a sober and contrite Dallas turn in a letter of resignation. The city council graciously praised Stoudenmire's prior service to the community and unanimously appointed Deputy James B. Gillett as the new town marshal. Dallas would remain in El Paso, living off money from his share of the Globe restaurant, which he had been willed when Sam died. Stoudenmire's sister, Virginia, she's still running the restaurant. He's just kind of living his best life at this point. On July 13th, 1882, Stoudenmire received another source of income as U.S. Marshal Hal Gosling named him a Deputy United States Marshal for the Western District of Texas with headquarters in El Paso. So he's a cop in El Paso again. Still drinking and carousing, Dallas and former Deputy William Page were arrested by the shotgun-wielding Town Marshal Gillett at the Acme Saloon on July 29th, as the pair were about to draw their guns on each other. The next day, each man was fined $25 and released. In August and early September of 1882, Deputy U.S. Marshal Stoudenmire helped New Mexico Sheriff Pat Garrett clamp down on train robberies and crimes committed on board the trains of the Santa Fe Railroad. If you're not familiar with who Pat Garrett is, Pat Garrett's the guy that allegedly killed Billy the Kid. He either killed Billy the Kid or he killed a Mexican kid. Either way, he shot them in the back. September 17th, 1882, Dallas arrives in El Paso by train with a warrant that needs serving. He got off the train, pissed drunk, and proceeded to wander the city, hitting a few more saloons before ending the night at Abby Bell's Bordello. Stoudenmire waited for his favorite prostitute, quote-unquote Carrie, to arrive because they were going to do Bible study and play checkers and braid each other's hair. Because that's what you do in a house of ill repute like that. Absolutely. Dallas spent most of September 18th from about noon on, after he dragged himself away from Carrie's charms, wandering from saloon to saloon as assorted Manning brother partisans kept trying to talk him into signing another peace treaty with his enemies. Shortly after 5:30, the drunk and or stoned Dallas Stoudenmire has been maneuvered to Frank Manning's saloon, where he and Dr. George Felix Manning tensely passed the time waiting for the other Manning brothers to arrive. Eventually, as you do, harsh words were exchanged, and the pair started exchanging close-range gunfire and grappling with each other. The fight spills out into the street where Doc Manning, wounded by Dallas's gunfire, managed to shoot Stoudenmire a few times. And then his brother James arrived on the scene and put a bullet in the back of Dallas's head, killing him instantly. Dr. Manning sat astride Dallas Stoudenmire's corpse, battering his face with his own gun until he was dragged off the body. In the aftermath of the gunfight, none of the Mannings paid any legal price for what had just happened. The fix is in as usual. However, Doc Manning's right arm was paralyzed for the rest of his life from one of Dallas's bullets. As for the late Dallas Stoudenmire, his funeral was held by Freemasons Lodge number 130 in El Paso, since the lawman had received his third degree there on January 7th, 1882. Per his widow Isabella's wishes, his body was sent to Allenton, Texas, in Colorado County to be buried. After lying in state, he was buried by Masonic Caledonia Lodge number 68 of Columbus, Texas. His grave is in the cemetery in Allentown, but the large headstone disappeared long ago, and his exact resting place in the cemetery is no longer known. And, I mean, just like so many other Wild West stories that we can do, they just kind of end. I mean, this guy packed all of this violence and craziness into 36 years. He was 36 years old when he died. I mean, and like I said, again, unfortunately, a lot of these Wild West stories just end. Because he was just out doing something and then just, bam, he just got shot in the face and he's dead. And that's the end of the story. Sorry. Or in one case, gets his head squashed by his own wagon that he fell off of, which I gotta read that book. That guy was not a good person. But so anyway, that's the end of season 1. I hope you guys enjoyed it. I'm glad that you were all here for the ride. I appreciate all the support and everybody listening, and please continue to listen and support. I'm going to be gone for a couple weeks, but I will be back. And all the mess will be gone by then too. Not that it's a mess. They're books. I mean, I'm not going to get rid of books, right? I'm going to put them up somewhere else where they're just not like there, because it's kind of a headache that I can't really move. And there's just a bunch of books, and my bookshelves aren't that strong. So I'm going to put some other cool stuff up there. But what can we expect to see in season 2? We're definitely going to see uh, absolutely terrible people in some situations, like a Confederate general that wasn't a real good guy. Spoiler alert. Um, Possibly the worst person that's ever existed that did some really nasty stuff that would lead directly to some other folks dying. Keep that nice and vague. I also want to do some cool people. I really want to do some cool people. Like, maybe an English dude that fought in World War II that used some unconventional weaponry, we'll call it. I've got a lot planned. Got a lot planned. Maybe a communist cannibal island? Who knows? Who knows? Who knows? We don't know where we're going to land yet. But again, stick with me. I really appreciate it. And if you want to make sure that you're getting all of my stuff when it comes out, or if you want to get it early, go over to Patreon. Patreon.com/1159 media gets you early access to my show, gets you early access to everything else there. Gets you backdoor access to a bunch of stuff there as well, where other shows, not mine, because I don't really do that, because you guys don't really want to sit here and listen to me stumble over my own tongue, do you? And then be like, oh, well, it sounds great when when it's edited, but he can't talk. Yes, you're absolutely right. I can't talk, which is why I don't do that. And I just edit it and be like, oh, yeah, it's pretty good, right? But anyway, there's a little bit of something for everybody over there. And if you want video, I post my... Stop it. I post my video episodes on Patreon. I post my video episodes on my YouTube channel. I post episodes on Spotify sometimes when they want me to put stuff out, which seems to be few and far between lately because of things. But anyway, also want to take a second to say thank you to Sam, the operator, for giving me a chance to do this, to have shown me that I have an audience with 1159, which I appreciate, because I was going to do this regardless. But the fact that he took a chance to say, I want you to try, I want you to join the team, basically, and have a built-in audience immediately was just insane. Because I've done this before, where you start a show and you have no audience and you have to build it. And that's incredibly hard. So getting a little bit of a head start with having so many cool people that are already listening to other stuff on the network that are willing to give you a chance when you're just basically a retard with a microphone and an internet connection that can sort of read and likes history. That's helpful. And I appreciate that. And I appreciate all of you guys that have taken time to listen to or watch any of my nonsense that that I've done. It means a lot. It's been a rough couple years, but doing this is getting me back on track with everything else. So thank all of you guys. I appreciate it. And I'll be back in a few weeks, I promise, with some really cool stuff. Not sure where we're going, like at the very beginning. I do have a request. I had a request from somebody that I have to do. And it's kind of a big one, so I don't know if I want to do it right off, but it's going to take a lot of time, because it's like, I got to go through like CIA documents and FOIA requests and all that stuff and figure out what's real and what's not. So History's fun though. I mean, it's interesting because it's like, hey, maybe this actually happened, maybe it didn't. Who knows? But I will see you guys in a few weeks. I love you. Thank you. We're all going to die someday. So go out and do some goon shit and leave a mark on the world, just like Dallas Stoudenmire. Thanks.